Hello, welcome to Ryan Talks, and today we're going to take a look at the Sonos Beam Gen 2 soundbar that I've been using for the past 4 months. First off, a happy new year to you. This is my first video of 2026. I've got plenty more videos planned for this year, so if you are new here and you love all things tech, physical media, things like that, please hit the subscribe button, give this video a like, and join me down in the comments. We all know built-in TV audio is really not that great. Despite what manufacturers claim, most people are going to get such a big improvement just by getting a soundbar so they don't have to use their built-in TV speakers. Up until I moved recently, I had a modest 5.1 setup and I was really happy with it. But when I moved and I was setting up my new front room, I went to unbox all the speakers in the speaker cable and I just thought, I don't want to run speaker cable around it, and I thought this would be a nice time to try something different. Now, I haven't used the soundbar for many years, and I've been happy with my 5.1 setup, but I've always had my eye on Sonos and the Sonos ecosystem, so I thought that would be a great time to take the plunge, try something new, and I decided to give the Sonos Beam Gen 2 soundbar a go. If you're not aware, Sonos have a number of soundbars. They have the Ray, which is kind of their entry level. They've got the Beam, which is their mid-level, and then they've got the Arc Ultra, which is their top level and much bigger soundbar. When I was looking, I decided to go on the Beam Gen 2 just because for me, I felt that I could buy the Beam Gen 2. I haven't got a massive front room, so I thought it would do the job. And with the money that I'd saved by not buying the Arc Ultra, I would be able to add some speakers to the system because that's kind of one of the big appeals with Sonos and its ecosystem. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later in the video, explaining what I have added and what I plan to add it in the future. The Beam Gen 2 retails for around £450 here in the UK. However, it is often on offer. I had a quick look before recording this video. It's about £380 on Amazon at the moment. I've put some links down in the description. So if you are interested in one, do take a look. On the top of the soundbar, we have our touch sensitive buttons as well as a small LED light. On the back, things are still nice and simple. We've got an Ethernet cable, we have a power cable connection, and we have an HDMI ARC connection. It is worth mentioning that there is no line-in connection on the Beam Gen 2. It's one of those things that you'd thought they would have put on, but they don't. I found setup really straightforward. You connect the speaker, you have to use the Sonos app to get set up, so you need to register an account, which again will annoy some people. But once you've got it all set up, you are pretty much ready to go. The Sonos app does have a thing called TruePlay, which the speaker will play some sounds. You hold your phone and you walk around the room, and it's meant to calibrate the speaker to your room. I believe TruePlay is only available on iPhone or Apple devices. I don't think it's available on Android, but do let me know down in the comments if that has changed. I compared the audio from before I used TruePlay and after I used the sort of TruePlay calibration. There wasn't a huge difference. It did sound a little bit, I suppose, louder around the room. But if you are an Android user, you're not kind of missing out a huge amount by not being able to use TruePlay. As soon as the Beam started playing sound, I was super impressed at how good it sounded. I had spent a couple of hours using the TV's built-in speakers just while I was waiting for it to be delivered. And as I say, I hadn't set up my other system. So I was just, watching TV. And as soon as it flicked over to the Gen 2, I forgot. It's just night and day difference. The sound was much louder, obviously, much fuller. Separation was good as well. It's never going to be as good as having 2 separate speakers. I'm not here to say that, but I've had cheap soundbars in the past where you can kind of hear the sounds coming from the speaker below the TV, whereas this sounded very open. And I'm not going to use audiophile, jargon here, but the sound did sound open. It doesn't sound like it's just confined to that one speaker. The Beam also handles bass really well. You can. I wouldn't say you can feel it sort of banging your chest like you would with a subwoofer, but it's definitely there. And I wouldn't say the Beam is lacking bass. However, because this is a Sonos ecosystem, I'm going to talk about what you can do to add a separate subwoofer shortly. I did find I enabled speech enhancement after a day or two, just because although it didn't sound muffled and it sounded good without it, I'm on my AV receiver, I used to just turn up the center speaker a little bit more to help with that dialogue. And this did a good job at doing it. And I've left it on for the last 4 months and been really happy with dialogue in TV shows and movies. The soundbar does support a lot of formats, including Dolby Atmos. Now, this doesn't have up-firing speakers, so it uses, software essentially to try and mimic sound above and sound around. I wouldn't say it does it that well. Again, as I mentioned just a minute ago, the sound does sound open. It doesn't sound like it's coming from a speaker, but at no point, was I looking up because I could hear the sound coming off the ceiling or anything like that. I've heard the Arc Ultra does a better job at that, but again, you are never going to replicate it fully without having, up-firing speakers. I've mainly been using the soundbar for sort of general TV viewing and movies. I've got a separate setup for music. I have tested it with lots of different streaming services and listening to music, and it does a really good job. But just for me, I just don't, I've got a separate stereo setup, and you're just never going to beat that with a soundbar. But this does support Dolby Atmos with Apple Music. It does support lossless 24/48. It doesn't support Bluetooth, so this isn't a Bluetooth speaker, but you've got your Spotify Connect and AirPlay, so you can do it within the actual streaming apps themselves, or use the Sonos app, which I believe gives you the absolute best sound actually going into the streaming services via the Sonos app and letting it play that way. Now, nothing's perfect. There are a few little niggles I've got with the Beam Gen 2. The first one is the lack of remote. I know that's not a big one, but it doesn't come with a remote. For when I'm watching movies and TV, that's not a problem, because obviously you would just use your Apple TV remote or anything to turn the volume up and down. But I think if I was using this a lot more for music, it would be a little bit annoying having to go over to the speaker and turn it up and down. First world problems, really not a big deal, but it's just something I wanted to mention. The other one is the LED light. It does not change depending on the format. And I think this is more just of a hangover from when I used to have an AV receiver. I used to like to know, what format was being played, whether it was Dolby Atmos, etc. But there's no way of knowing it. You have to go into the app and check that way. I think if the light just changed a different color for different formats, that would be a really good thing. Maybe they can do it with a software update, but I think it would help. While on the topic of formats as well, just quickly mention this does not support DTS:X as a format. It's only Dolby Atmos. And the last thing, I have found twice in the 4 months that I have had this, audio has just stopped working. I've turned the TV on and there's just no sound. And the only way I've managed to fix it is to unplug the Sonos, turn off everything, get it back on, and then it works. Now, this may not be the Sonos, but I never had this problem before, and I haven't really changed anything else within the setup. I'm assuming it's just a connectivity issue, that it's lost connection somehow. It's only happened twice, but when it has happened, it has been really annoying. As a standalone soundbar, I think the Beam Gen 2 is great. It sounds good, it looks good, it does what you want a soundbar to do. After a few weeks though, I was finding that I was missing the kind of surround effect that I was used to from my previous setup. And this was one of the reasons I chose a Sonos, because I knew that down the line, if I was going to start missing things, I could add the surround speakers very easily. So I was looking at what speakers to add, and often this can be bundled with the Era 100s. Some people recommend the Era 300s, which are much bigger, and I imagine if you had the room for it, they would be the good option and the budget for it, because they're quite expensive. I think they work quite well with the R Culture as well, but usually people recommend the Era 100s with the Beam Gen 2. However, you are able to add some older Sonos speakers to the setup. So I looked at the Sonos Play 1s, and I got a pair of them on eBay for just over £100. Super easy to add to the system. You just turn them on, go into the app, it recognizes that you want to use them as surround speakers. And I'll be honest with you, I have been super impressed with them, and I'm so glad I didn't pay for the Era 100s or the Era 300s. Now, I haven't compared them, but to me, the way they've been performing in movies and stuff like that, I don't know how much better they can be. Obviously, they're going to be, if you're going to pay for much more expensive and bigger surround speakers, you are going to get a fuller sound. But these are doing the job. So if you are someone that has a Beam Gen 2 and you're looking at adding some surround speakers and you don't want to spend loads of money, do take a look at the Play 1s, because they can be added to this system and they do work really well. The next thing I'm looking at is a subwoofer. Again, I mentioned that it handles bass well, but it's never going to replace a dedicated subwoofer. So I'm looking at the Sub Mini. It's about £450 here in the UK. And from my understanding, from what I've been looking at online, the Sub takes a lot of the bass sort of processing and stuff away from the Beam Gen 2. So the Beam can focus on the mids and the highs, and it performs much better with the Sub. So do watch this space. I am looking at ordering one in the next few weeks and adding it to the system. And then I have a full Sonos home theater system that I think is probably performing much better than my previous kind of modest 5.1 setup. Overall, I'm happy with the setup, and I'm glad I went down the Sonos route. That ability to be able to just start with a soundbar and then add things as I wish was sort of really appealing to me, and it's kind of worked out quite well. And I would highly recommend it. You start with the soundbar. If you think you need more bass, buy the Sub. If you think you want surrounds, add the surrounds, and you could, do it as budget allows, and things like that. Now, obviously, you can do the same with an AV receiver and separate speakers, and some people are probably going to want to go down that route. I have got a video on starting a basic home theater 5.1 setup. I made it a little while ago, but I'll link it up here. But for me, not having speaker cable running around, the ability to sort of join that Sonos ecosystem and put some around the house and have it coming out the soundbar, it just works really well, and I'm really happy. As always, thank you for watching, and do let me know down in the comments your thoughts on Sonos and your experiences with Sonos. Do you have the Arc Ultra? Do you recommend the Sub Mini? I would love to know, and I will catch you in the next video.